Today's sponsor is Audible.com, a leading provider of spoken audio information and entertainment. Listen to audiobooks whenever and wherever you want. Blame Public Radio. This is RPPR episode 68, Phases That Are Eclipsed. And this episode is in part sponsored by Audible.com. And with me, as always, is Tom Church. And this episode, we have Caleb as a special guest.
Yes, both of us together. Thank you for mentioning us, Ross. Yeah. I feel better. Do you feel better?
Yes, I do. Hello, everyone.
Yes. In this episode,
Waving at the microphone.
As you may know, if you're a fan of the Actual Play podcast, we've been playing a lot of Eclipse Phase for these last many months, and we thought instead of just doing an episode about advice, specific or generic advice for all systems, we would do an episode.
We're going to review a system.
Yeah, we're going to talk shop.
Episode.
All three of us have played it and run Eclipse Phase, so I thought it would be a good time. We're going to probably do a couple episodes like this, just focus on different systems. So if you have a system you'd like us to...
You might have heard of Caleb running a particular campaign, No Evil. I'm sure you might have heard of it. Would you like to plug your own campaign, Caleb?
Yes, it's built around homophones entirely. We're on episode 82 now.
Yeah, sure.
Just all homophones.
Yeah.
That's
and
really,
puns,
that's
terrible
really
puns.
I don't get much into laser battles and things like it's linguistically based.
Yeah,
pretty much the entire time. So enjoy.
Yeah,
that.
It's all been in the University of Mars. Linguistic debates. Yeah.
Because that really is the core of Eclipse Phase, is linguistic debates.
Yeah. So we're going to be talking a little bit about the system, our experiences playing it, and getting used to it. Eclipse Phase is, there's a lot of feedback on it. Some people have criticized the character generation system, just the complexity of the system and setting as a whole. So we'll get into all of that. And there will be a lot of stuff to do in that regard. Of course, we do have a bit of news. First off, we have the RPPR Minecraft server is up and running, 16 players max, and I finally set up permission. So we've had 2 incidents of griefing, and we've so now with the permission set up, all players have to be manually approved before they can modify the world. You are just a chatbot who cannot touch or do anything of interest until I approve you.
Proof that all you need is a hammer and a whole world for you to mine.
Yeah, well,
that's it.
You see, the thing is, I've gone from playing Minecraft to playing Minecraft admin. It's not quite as fun. So, but I'm getting used to it. So we'll be adding a lot of features. There's all kinds of crazy shit being built there. Caleb, I think you had a good idea. Like, hopefully by the end of the year, by this time next year, it will be like Blame, just endless construction as far as the mind can see. No outdoor anymore. So it's just endless crazy crap. So
and only after the last landscape is covered in construction will the Dark One arise.
Yeah, sure, Tom.
And Aaron's building, Cat's Lair from Thundercats too.
Yeah, he mentioned that, and I kind of want to see what that's all about. So, anyway,
he's adorable.
Yeah, he is,
and he doesn't listen to the podcast, so we can basically say whatever we want.
Yeah. We can. So, and finally, or next in the news, this episode is being brought to you by Audible.com. You can go to audiblepodcast.com/roleplaying and get a 25% off. Or, let's see here. You get 2 weeks off, sorry. It's 2 weeks off free to try out their audiobooks. Caleb, you were listening to one, actually. You mentioned...
Yeah, I just brought Charles Strauss's The Atrocity Archives, and it's really high quality, and the voice acting is really good. He does voices, so I'm entertained like a child being read to sleep. It's
about Lovecraftian madness and office politics.
Yes, just like
do they do it in
just like
voice?
Mother used to.
Who's reading it? Is it Strauss himself? Or
No. They got an actor. I forget the name because I just started it today, but he's excellent. He does a variety of accents pretty well. And
okay, good.
Yeah,
it has to be very British.
Oh yeah, well of course it's British and therefore better because they speak the correct English.
I know. We're just fucking colonies.
Too bad we rule everything.
Yeah, that'll last, Tom. I mean,
hey, America will never ever decline.
The sun never sets on the. Something like that.
I saw what you tried to do there, Ross. I did not appreciate that. Oh. America!
Tom Church is a patriot.
So, Eclipse Phase. to give a brief summary for those of you who aren't aware of it, it's a transhuman sci-fi horror role-playing game. The basic premise is that it's been 10 years after a group of artificial intelligences known as the Titans, which is an acronym. I can't remember, like tactical something, death to humans.
Shit that will kill
Skynet, basically, wiped out 95% of all of humanity. Fortunately, humanity was advanced enough that they had numerous habitats and space colonies throughout the solar system. And so 10 years later, the Titans leave. They disappear through what commonly is believed. The common theory is that they left through the Pandora Gates, which are recently discovered alien gates to other parts of the universe. So now it's 10 years later. There's a group of people that are trying to protect humanity from other existential threats, like the remnants of the Titans and other super weapons that can destroy all of humanity. And this organization is called Firewall. It's an illegal conspiracy. So think a little like Delta Green for you call
with much better tech.
With much better tech, and you go around fighting these surgeons, which are what people that are infected with the Titan virus or Titan nanovirus, Titan technology are called. And some of them, so it can be like Dead Space, where you're facing horrible biomechanical monsters. It could be like
the Terminator.
It could be any number of things. So it's basically a science fiction thing, but it's very open ended, and so you can get many different types of sci-fi tropes. It is reasonably hard science in the sense that they don't do things that are blatantly. Well, there are a couple things that blatantly impossible, like the Pandora Gates, but they say that's alien, so we don't know. How
we
that
didn't
works.
build those shit.
Space whales.
Space whales, yes.
Are you saying the Syria aren't believable?
Yeah, he doesn't like those. We'll get into that in a second. But most of the characters, most of the science, most of the human technology is based on what we believe can be possible. So there's no FTL spaceships, there's no no Star Trek stuff, no hyperdrive. And humanity does have a lot of crazy shit like cortical stacks, which are basically digital diamond armored hard drives in the base of your spine that back up your mind constantly. So if you die, they can pull your cortical stack out and put you in a new physical body.
And you just briefly went to sleep, back here.
Yeah, that's how it will happen. Yeah, that's not traumatic at all. Like, oh my god, I'm being eaten by a giant monster, and then you wake up like, what happened?
And then
why am I black now?
Why am I a gorilla?
Yeah, why am I a gorilla? So,
I have got to fling some poop right now.
So that's the kind of thing that Eclipse Phase is about. Now, so that it came out in 2009. I got it at Gen Con 2009, and. So the first, we'll just kind of talk about first impressions. So when I first got it, I started reading. I was really hyped about it, but I was like, "Holy shit! How the fuck am I ever going to run this?" Because this is not only the concept, but the technology and the setting is very complex. It's not something. It's not like you're vampire hunters in the suburbs. Go, It's not like something, or you're your fantasy heroes killing monsters in dungeons.
Well, I also remember that you explained to me the story after you've been reading it on the way back from Gen Con, and my thoughts were, how the fuck is Ross going to run this?
Yeah.
That's then, of course, my next thought was, oh, great, he gets to fucking sleep the rest of the way back while I have to drive. Yes, sleep, Ross.
Yep. So, what were your first? Well, I mean, that was first. But what?
But when I heard it, my first thoughts when I heard what it was about was, well, besides that, was also, holy shit, this is actually new. I'd never heard anything like this before.
Right. And if you're not like a transhuman, is someone who's really into that particular type of science fiction or scientific thinking, futurist thinking, I guess, theoretical thinking. You're not going to be familiar with a lot of these concepts. So, Caleb, what about you?
I've noticed that a lot of RPG players tend to not read straight front to back.
Yeah.
They tend to skim and go through, wherever the art's at or what particular concept they look for. As I'm new to it, I just kind of started on page 1 and moved through. And the setting material in the core book is fantastic, and it hooked me.
Yeah.
And my favorite system so far is, one roll or at that point was one roll or Cthulhu Dark because it had the least rules. And then, so when I got to character generation, I admit that if I started that, it had probably turned me off the game unnecessarily. But the setting material is fantastic. It's really well researched. It's really well written in character voice.
Yeah.
You get to play one of those background characters from a Transmet splash page. Basically,
that's a good way of putting it.
You are
Transmetropolitan.
Yeah, Transmet Warnels. You are a wild, crazy, whatever you want to be, techno alien hybrid thing.
Right.
And
not alien, but
well, yeah. But it's a really great setting, and the system's really good too once you get the hang of it. I think you had a really good idea in that you ran a tutorial adventure first, where we just kind of baby stepped our way into the system without diving in head first.
Yeah, actually, I mean,
the campaign worked that way too.
I mean, we didn't play that until this year, I think, or it was late 2010. So I got it in 2009. I didn't run it for all of 2010 because I was so intimidated by the system, and finally I was like, and I just looked at it and like, how the hell am I going to get people to, what am I going to do in this, and until I finally thought about like video games, the really good ones tend to have really good tutorials that explain like, here's the crazy shit we're going to have you do in this game, like, oh, in Prince of Persia, here's a little thing on how you rewind time so you never really die, or here in Fallout, here's how you pick up objects and murder people or whatever, shoot cockroaches first, and so I figured that would be a good way of starting it out, like explaining that, so like focus on each, so I wrote down a list of each of the main concepts that I thought players would have a stumbling block on, which were like, cortical stacks and backing up, resleeving. Resleeving is their term for switching physical bodies. Your mind stays the same, but you're put in a new physical body, and that body could be human. It could be biological, an animal or human body, or it could be a robot body, a synthetic or synth. So that's kind of how I started that. So.
Unless you're really into mechanics, I think most people are a little intimidated by the system. But they shouldn't be, because you can do tutorial missions, stuff like that. Yeah. And then once you really get into the setting, as long as you get your players to read the setting material or kind of introduce it to them in some way, like through their familiarity with Transmet or some sort of, or Charles Stross or Altered Carbon.
The book does have the Eclipse Phase book does have a good bibliography.
Yeah, influences, bibliography. Yeah. If you can kind of get them hooked on the setting that way, it doesn't matter if you screw things. Like we screwed up Frey for the first 5 sessions. It doesn't matter if you make a mistake; it'll get hashed out eventually, and it's just a really fun game to play. So you shouldn't let the page count scare you out of it.
We started playing before the errata came out, so we actually the margin of success then changed while we were playing,
while we were in the midst of it,
and thank God it did, because
it's much better with the blackjack system.
So that was kind of everyone's first impression. But like, obviously, the first sort of pitfall, at least if you're going to be playing the game, is character generation. Now, I was very lucky, or the Eclipse Phase is very wise that they put in a bunch of really good pre-gens.
Yeah.
That pre-generated characters that you can just use. So like, whenever somebody shows up, I'm not going to have you make a character. Take one of these guys and give them a name or her a name, and that's it. But eventually, we all had to make characters. So. What were your? And this is the reason I'm bringing this up also is because this is kind of a lot of people I've read like RPG.net and other websites or forums are like, I don't want to. I think this is really interesting, but holy shit, that character generation that scares the shit out of me because.
Well, it did the first time I did it.
Okay, yeah.
But and I think I was
the Octopus your first character, or was it something else? Did you make something?
The first one I made from hand was Preston.
Was Preston? Okay.
Yeah, and everyone else by that time they had the Excel spreadsheet thing.
Yeah, there's I'll put a link for the fan made. There's an Excel character sheet generator. There's actually been a few, but there's one in particular we've all been using.
It's really good, but I was the only one in the group that actually I did mine manually.
Yeah,
and it was intimidating until I started doing it.
Yeah,
and really once you really start getting into it, it's like, oh, this is just apply points here, and I mean you have to keep track of a lot of bonuses from whatever morph you are. Your backgrounds, but really, it's actually a lot simpler than a lot of other systems.
Oh yeah.
Well, I read Champions, so
have you made characters in Champions?
I made one. I should say, I made a character in Champions once.
Yeah.
Once. I like math as much as the next guy, but not that much. So really, I mean, compared to especially Champions, no, Eclipse Phase is pretty easy to learn. If you just do it once, I mean, just make a practice character.
Yeah.
And by then, if you make one character, you'll know pretty much what you need to do.
Okay.
That's what I think.
Yeah, you made a character. You made your own character, too, for a tutorial game.
Yeah, I made a couple to, practice with the system, because I once I read the setting material, I knew I wanted to run it one day. So I made a couple different ones for the one shot we ran. And it is pretty daunting. I don't see any reason to do it without the spreadsheet. They've got every morph in there with the exception of the stuff in Panopticon, and I think they're working on updating that. They may be already up there, and I haven't looked at it yet. But it's not only all the
update on a regular basis.
Yeah, it's not only all the gear, and the morphs are bodies, by the way. For those uninitiated, it's not only
physical bodies.
Yeah, it's not only the gear from the main book. It's everything from the supplements too. Save the most recent one. We're talking like months since it came out.
Yeah,
and it's really good. The best advice I can give somebody new to the system is to really think of your body like another item in your inventory. The mistake I see a lot of new players is they have the RPG hoarding system.
Yeah.
You know, like if Hoarders did an episode for RPG characters, it would be epic. You know, never throw anything away, things of that nature. But your body is a throwaway item as you are in a highly illegal conspiracy fighting godlike machine intelligences. So you die on occasion, and so you can buy a ton of cool stuff for it. But you know, there's a balance there, and it gets hard. It's hard to get used to that. So
yeah. So you always use the character the spreadsheet.
I have never done it by hand.
Yeah.
I found the Excel spreadsheet, and that's the first thing I looked for when I saw the character generation chapter. So
yeah,
I like to say that like the hardest thing to keep track of at first was the skills. Not so much as you put 1 point into them; it's 1 point per.
Yeah.
Until you get
over 60.
Until you get over 60, and that's only when you know you want the skill to go up higher than that.
Right.
You have to make sure that you remember. I have to add in 20 extra.
Yeah.
If you're going up to 80.
Yeah, there is another thing too is you have to spend so many points on active. They divide skills into active and then to knowledge skills. Mm-hmm. The active skills are things where you actually do things. You know, like
knowledge is knowing shit,
dodging and shooting, and sneaking,
swimming.
Yeah, but then the knowledge skills are like the fill in the blank skills, which I love it. So many systems have these like knowledge whatever, and then
this one has like knowledge. Hardware, interests, art, lots of categories.
You have to divide like 30% of your character points have to go to that, like with 300 out of 1,000. So, which can be like it can be a trick knowing what skills are important, what knowledge skills are important. Because like Martian beers, well, yeah, that could be useful, but maybe smuggling or security ops,
At first few times I hated it. Because I felt like it was hamstringing me. But as I've played it more, I really like that because you can min-max in the game. You can be, I kill thing with knives. Like, you can do that. But at the same time, they do make you are min-maxed. Like, if you're really good at killing things with knives, you're crappy at dodging. Like, or you cannot be a total game breaker, in my opinion, until you start using the technology. And there's ways around that. We'll talk about that later. But I like those obscure knowledge skills because they make you seem like a person, a transhuman, crazy person. But you do stuff other than murder things with knives.
Right. Well, then again, come on. If most people are insane, then aren't the sane ones the crazy people?
Right.
Exactly.
Think about that because I mean that is one of the things I've learned from playing the game. Sort of the next thing is that there are some top tier skills that like every character should have some competency in, but there's too many so that you can't be good at everything you'll need in a game.
No,
like the top ones are like Fray, which is dodge, obviously.
Free running.
Infosec, which is hacking. Obviously, in a high tech world, Infosec is really fucking important. Mm-hmm. Research perception.
I saw free running.
Free running and free fall. Mm-hmm. So because you never know if you're
Zero G. It's not the same.
Yeah, and at least one combat skill. And
and look for death traps because some people we know just keep throwing them in.
I mentioned that.
Yes.
But that's
Mr.
Like
Death Trap Man.
10 skills in of itself. That's like 10, I've just mentioned, a bunch of these skills. That'd be like 500, 600 points just to get all of those up to core competency, which is half your character points. And that's not even counting the 300 points you have for the knowledge skills. So you can't be an expert hacker, soldier, researcher, and stealth expert.
Which I love.
You have to pick
what I love it actually makes the group have to work together.
Yeah, you can't be good at everything you're going to need. Just not even counting esoteric specialties like nano fabrication or something like that. So
or some symbol space design.
Yeah, symbol space design.
Which
symbol space is their term for like virtual reality. completely
totally immersive, photorealistic. Yeah.
So it's like you're in you're playing the video game, but for real.
You're in the Matrix.
Yeah, crappy movie premises.
Beef jerky.
But playing the game, is there's kind of a learning curve even once you make a character. I think because one thing, campaign expectations are a little different for every, like a gate gate crashing was what they call, going through the Pandora's gates, and
seeing what's
it's
there.
More of the Star Trek thing, which is like, hey, brave new
boldly
frontier.
go where no one has gone before,
right.
And don't lose your mind.
And then there's, a political intrigue type game where you're trying to find out who's, fucking over this part of the solar system, what
or a mahjong tournament,
or the standard kind of Call of Cthulhu like survival horror, like go to this space station that stopped broadcasting. Find out what happened. There's bodies on
let's
the
be honest.
outside.
Like, when have we ever gone to a station where that's happened? And it's pretty much like, we were partying and our transmitter went down. We're sorry.
Yeah.
Hey, you want to party with us?
Yeah.
I really think that could be freaky. Actually, if you come on board like, oh no, we were just having a grand old celebration.
Yeah.
Like, booze for everybody. Come on.
The Faber's on full speed. So
I'm not saying we should have that, and no evil there, Caleb, but.
10 sessions of just party. Woo! Nothing stressful. Woo!
It's like, there's an exurgent, but it's partying too because it's trying to copy us.
Yeah, exactly. So
then you probably later. We have to keep partying, otherwise it's going to remember what it's here for and kill all of us.
Right.
So we have to party and never stop, or we'll die.
You realize you're just giving me game ideas now, right?
Yeah.
I can't imagine what you would think I would be doing that for.
But that's the thing. Like each of those campaigns requires, even out of the must-have skills, the top tier skills I listed. Some campaigns are going to have it more. Like the gate crashing campaign, the infosec isn't going to be as important because you're in an alien world where you're not going to be able to hack as much stuff. So, but on the other hand, dodging is in a political intrigue game where if you're going to get killed, it's going to be with an assassination team that's going to just wipe you out, and you're not going to have.
Or it's going to be in that poison you just drank.
Yeah, poison. Yeah, something like that, or nano swarming, disassembling you while you go to sleep. So, there's sort of like a learning curve of what kind of skills you'll need and what kind of morphs. And another thing is how important gear is to your character. Because I think there's sort of like the PC mentality is it's very easy to load up on gear at the very beginning because the really cool stuff isn't super expensive. Like even a normal character can become a really badass. Like they have a pregen who's a Reaper morph with his floating death ball, and you could do that at 1,000 points, but there's some pitfalls to that. So.
Yeah, like I think we'll get to this when we're running the games. I think one of the best benefits of the games is that you're a little off the hook and balance sometimes because you can kill characters. Like it's not like those 40 game sessions go out the window and the person has to re-roll and they're no longer engaged. They still get to play their beloved AGI, Raven, whatever they built up, because they have save points built into the game with the cortical stacks.
And also back up, so even if your cortical stack is lost, like you're...
And it's hard science, so like if you want to go from Mercury to Earth, you need to sit in a spaceship for months, if not years on end. So what you do is you broadcast yourself and you got to pick a new body. The thing is you got to pay for a new body once you get there. So the one downfall I see in the character generation system for new players that they should really avoid is that you can use your character points to buy yourself more credits so you can get more a badass body. And you need to realize that those character points do not come back once you die or travel. Like... You spent those credits, they're gone. So if you fork over 200 character points to make yourself rich as heck and blow it all on the most awesome
Reaper morph,
Reaper morph body on Earth, and then even if you're successful and murder everything in the system, the second you have to like move, like the rent goes up and you've got to move habitats, then you are, trapped in a symbol space cold space server or walking around in a case morph.
Case morph being the cheapest,
which gives you like minuses to everything, and
Well, actually, they have the lemon trait, which I know you love because you inflicted it on one of the other morphs. Which is
and then also your skills aren't that good, when you move to that other body. So It is a trap for your traditional RPG player, but once you get past that,
you can make a character who's significant. Like once he loses that gear advantage, then you might as well this is when you make a new character because you've lost like 100, 200 points worth of bonuses. So you might as well make 1,000-point character whose all his bonuses, all those points are spent on skills and ego traits. Traits are basically like feats. There's like social butterfly or ambidexterity, and some of those are ego, which means they stay with your mind, and some are morph, which means like if you're immune to poison, well, that doesn't. Your digital mind isn't immune to poison. It's the physical body you're in,
Yeah,
So,
and you're not going to catch up with your other party members who sleeved into a version of Wall-E or something in the first game because you're like maxed out at 7 res points per arc. Like they do it by arc, not session. So if it goes into multiple sessions, you still got 7 character points back of those 200 you just lost.
Yeah, Reaper Morph is 100 points.
Yeah,
I remember that. So
I also really loved actually the secondary economy of favors and reputation.
Oh yeah, that's actually a good point, and that's another thing players may not realize how important those are. There's actually a whole set of skills for networking, which is basically streetwise, but for different factions. Factions being like scientists,
like hypercorps, scientists, criminals.
Yeah, every major group.
Firewall's one.
Yeah, social class kind of, more of a social class rather than faction, really, because it's spread across the entire system. You have your reputation with them. So if you're like a scientist, you'd have R rep for scientist reps, and that's what they call it, or G rep for criminals, and then you could go around and ask, make a networking check, which would be streetwise for whatever.
Yeah, and you can you get favors, and you can burn those instead of credits.
Right. Now the base system, we've been doing a little differently in No Evil. Like we've had to burn off. Like usually you only burn off rep if you've already used up favors. Like the way it works, I think, is like there are 5 levels of favors. One for minor, which refreshes every half hour. So every half hour you can ask for a minor favor, and that's the equivalent of like 50 credits worth of goods or services. And then it goes all the way up to expensive, which are like 20,000 credits, and that's like every 6 months.
Hey, I need a ship to go from here to here.
Yeah. Or Farcast to Oberon, Uranus' moon, that's where one of the gates is. It's on the outer edge of the solar system. So like, if you wanted to get 2 of those really expensive favors in the same day, for the second favor you have to burn rep for that.
Yeah.
So it depends. You should ask your GM. Actually, that's another thing. Running the game is sort of a challenge. Like, what do you house rule and what do you not house rule? Because that also depends on the kind of campaign for your life. One thing we have been house ruling. That I didn't even realize it at first until someone on the Minecraft server actually pointed out to me, is the wound threshold rule. Like, wounds are, you take durability, hit point damage, and if you take, there's a wound threshold where if you take so much damage in a single attack, in the way the rules are as written, you get a wound. A wound gives you a -10 penalty to everything until that's healed, and that represents a significant injury, like a broken limb, or your eye's been put out or something like that. Now you can get pain resistance to like ignore those wounds, but that's how it is. Now we've been doing it where no matter how much damage you take, like once you get past that wound threshold, you take a wound. But as the rule, like say your wound threshold's 10, and you take 5 points of damage and then 6 points of damage. Rules as written, you wouldn't have a wound. What we've been doing is, you've gone past 10, 5, 6, 11, so you get a wound. So that's kind of one of the things you have to keep.
But thematically, that's more our kind of group. Like, we like a game where shooting is bad. Like, it's not something
there's consequences.
There's consequences for your actions. So there's that. And I've started burning rep more because I tried keeping track. And I think the rep system works as written for a shorter campaign. But my problem is that I love the setting so much. Like, I want to cover everything from Mercury to out of the Milky Way. So it's been going on for a really long time, campaign wise, and it's really tough to keep track in your notes. Like, okay, so and so asked for this favor with this time period in this game session, and it's been this much in story time, and that's a little difficult for me. So what I've been doing is I've been burning rep. And I provide more opportunities to earn it back. Yeah. So I have basically turned it into a credit system. But the thing is that in order to get the rep back, you don't work a job necessarily. You do a one shot or an off story arc, or it's a plot moment. Because really, it's that way in any game anyway. D&D, you gotta raid the castle and kill the lich to get his rubies or whatever. I mean, in this one, you've got to go, plant the virus on the server of the hypercorp. You still have to do some version of a job. So yeah, you can house roll all that kind of stuff.
And the correct answer would be, Caleb, killing the lich to destroy his phylactery.
Yes.
You're taking a soul.
All right. Okay.
So, but yeah, that's a good point. So you have to sort of think about like, how do you want to run wounds as is, or do you want to do rep a little differently? Like,
but not beforehand. It can come out and play as long as your players trust you as a GM and you have like fun and are actually friends.
Yeah.
You don't have to like, oh God, what do I do, and plan everything out before you start. You should have fun.
Yeah.
And kind of let it develop.
Yeah, we've all run Eclipse Phase games, and we've all kind of done it differently thematically. Tom, you've even run. I know you haven't posted your game yet, but because everyone wants no evil. So
exactly, yeah.
So I mean, and yours wasn't even like a horror game, really.
Not really.
Why don't you tell people a little bit about your experience running it? So.
Yeah, mine was more of a. I don't want to say a heist, but it
was a heist.
Oh, I guess okay, yeah, it was a heist, but it was Yeah, it was basically kind of, it was like Ocean's 11. I'm not going to say anything else about that.
Yeah,
but it's
it was in the one of the habitat in
Atlantica it's from the Panopticon book,
right?
Which is essentially like a huge hollowed out asteroid that is basically an ocean inside of it. So that was kind of cool because every time that we had to fight, you had to take into account you were surrounded by water at all times.
Yeah.
At first I kind of found the hardest thing for me when I first ran the game, since that was my first game, was getting the tech clear in my head.
Yeah.
Like, I admit in that one I had EMPs doing the stuff they do now.
Right. Which
doesn't work the same way in Eclipse Phase.
Right. To explain, EMPs today would fry out electronics. We go back to the Dark Ages. In Eclipse Phase, it specifically says that EMP... all electronics are shielded now because everything's in space, so there's a lot of radiation anyway. Mm-hmm. So, however, EMP has two effects. One on nanoswarms, because nano machines are too small to shield, so they get shut down. They take a lot of damage from that. And two, it does stop radio transmissions. Like you can't go to connect to the mesh for a short while after because it interferes. You can't. Mm-hmm. There's too much interference between. It's like a jamming thing. So that's how EMP works in Eclipse Phase. So very different thematically.
But as I was running the game, I kind of found that the tech really makes things far more interesting than just a standard heist because there's so much more shit you have to keep track of.
Yeah, that's kind of the big challenge. I mean, I know especially after Panopticon, I was like, how the fuck can anyone do anything illegal ever in these places? Because holy shit, they
forgery maybe, like forging paintings maybe.
Well, yeah, if you can fabricate it, it's the exact same thing down to the molecular level. So how can you tell me?
Can you just, by the way, can you imagine like CSI Mars in that? What crimes could they possibly? I mean, you could literally have. David Caruso doing that thing because he knows, like, we're going to catch this criminal. Of course we're going to catch him.
Yeah.
Like, how can we not catch him? I have his entire genetic history from this one skin flake.
Yeah. But that, of course, then that is kind of... Actually, that wouldn't necessarily be a dead end because it'd be like, oh, this is a splicer morph that was cloned 500 times. It's a popular model. Half the people in this village or this settlement are this exact same guy. They just have plastic surgery so they can tell each other fucking apart. So yeah.
I will say on the EMP thing that this is a game. My favorite part about the game, I realize that I could just put it into words now. Like, it's really great if you learn to game the modifiers in combat. There's a number of cheat sheets on the EP site because they're very smart and they aggregate their player-made stuff and put it on one page. Yeah. And there's a number of cheat sheets that has all like the combat modifiers. So like, do I take cover? Do I go full auto? Do I go burst? If you can game that, you can get a kind of a bonus in actually achieving goals in the game. But in the game, you get no greater bonus than understanding the setting. Yeah. Like when you can propose a good idea, a good way to ask a favor on a social network, or an interesting way to disguise yourself if you're trying to be, or a way to get around hacking, or nothing gets you farther in the game than understanding how the actual setting works, because they do deal with things. There's a whole section in Panopticon about why you wouldn't instantly explode if you were depressurized. Written by a NASA scientist. So, if you know that, you're stronger in a lot of situations. So I like the game because it rewards. As mechanic heavy it is, in my opinion, it rewards storytelling over math. In that, you understand the setting and the verisimilitude of it more, you ipso facto do better most of the time.
I mean, that kind of brings up a good point for me too. That it's marketed and designed as a sci-fi horror game, but it really can be done as any. And I know I've mentioned this in podcasts before. It can really be done as any type of hard science fiction game you can imagine. You can even minimize stuff. So, like, if you don't like cortical stacks, it's easy to like describe a scenario where you're gate crashers or something like that, where you don't you're flats, which are basically normal people. We're all flats. We're not genetically enhanced. So that's what they call us in the future. Well, so you could have you could do Star Trek, through gate crashing or Stargate basically, or you could do a cyberpunk type game. You could do any kind of sci-fi genre game.
There's a whole Mass Effect conversion on their website.
Yeah,
they've done it to Savage Worlds, and they encourage all that kind of stuff. So,
well, actually, the main thing I like it for, you can actually, besides the magic, for the most part, you can kind of do riffs and not have it suck.
Oh, yeah?
You really can.
Yeah.
Because if you like any kind, you could there's exploring ruins. Well, of course, there's that. Or you could explore ruins, or at the same time, giant sprawling futuristic metropolises. Or you could actually start doing some Indiana Jones desert shit on Mars.
Yeah.
Or it could be undersea shit, like from Atlantica or whatever.
Yeah.
You can do stuff in space.
You can do Mad Max, really.
You really could,
like on Earth, because Earth is like a post-apocalyptic ruin, so it would be pretty easy to describe.
Except there, you could actually do creatures, just like weird bodies people have designed.
Yeah. So yeah, you like that's the thing. It's like almost like it's the only science fiction RPG I can think of that is something that I would actually run me interested in science fiction, because like every other sci-fi game out there is either a licensed property.
Well, we've done a show that we've covered this before. Like Star Wars is a fantasy in space.
Yeah, Star Trek is like kind of outdated now, and BattleTech is like really, really anachronistic now. Like giant boxy robots shooting each other like at close range, like World War II artillery ranges. Like really,
I agree that with Tom that it gives you all this freedom, but to differentiate from riffs,
please do.
I will say that without going into extensive meta plot that is just like White Wolf mind bending, they distinguish themselves in that while you do have all this crazy stuff and all these crazy choices, in describing the setting, they realize they give you options for having them interact in meaningful ways. Yeah. So if you have a scum swarm full of orgy biohacking, nano swarmoids, they don't get along with like hyper corporate, immortal oligarchs. Like they're not on the same level in terms of a value system. And so they're unlike Rifts, where it's like, here's another book. We've thrown this shit in here now. And it's
Cyber
somewhere.
Ninjas.
Cyber ninja wizard bats. Go.
Also, climbing is just climbing.
We're not talking about that, Tom.
No, I think we are. Oh, I think it's in your head. I look at your face.
We should just do an episode on that. The climbing dilemma.
No.
I think of course, the other thing is, we mentioned this, we touched on this earlier a little bit, like the Munchkin danger, the idea that, characters can become too powerful in this. And certainly, if you're not used to the system, you can easily design things that are not, really challenging. There are a couple of, I think, warning signs. Like one is the gear. We were talking about gear dependency. If you get someone who's fucking really cybered up, he's a death machine, and that's a problem, because either you kill them, in which case they're useless, because they sunk too many points into it, or they're significantly worse than the other characters, or two, they're death on legs and nothing else can touch them, or anything that could challenge that guy, the Terminator will just massacre everyone else. So that's one problem. But there are other problems too. Another one is forking, and we haven't even touched on that.
No.
You want to explain it, Tom? Or?
It's essentially you make a copy of you.
Yeah, because your mind is a file.
Mind, your mind's data.
Yeah, so you can you could run another version of it on another. There are ways to do it legitimately. Like there's a cyberware upgrade called multitasking, where you have 4 forks of yourself, so you can be writing a speech and having a gunfight at the same time. But you could make an alpha fork of yourself, which is an identical copy. Beta forks are slightly degraded, and then there's delta forks. I think that's delta forks are the retards, but the beta forks are kind of okay, and then the alpha forks are literally identical to you.
It's identical person.
And the thing is, some players will see that like, oh my god, I have so much power,
Well, yeah. But then again, like if you just because you have an alpha fork doesn't mean he's going to obey you.
Well, yeah, that's one thing that is in the rules, and I know Caleb, you mentioned this, that alpha, as the rules as written, alpha forks are always handled as NPCs by the game master. You only have one character at a time. Because I saw someone on something alpha forums talking about Eclipse. He's like, I'm running 4 instances of myself, and I control all of them. And I'm like, you are a horrible munchkin, sir.
Yeah.
There's that issue, but I would say just in general that first off, Eclipse Phase is a game for mature role players. Like,
it's
high school students, unless you are exceptionally above the curve, go stop listening to this and go write your paper. Because, like I would, having had limited role playing experience in high school, oh my God, Eclipse Phase would have been a disaster of epic proportions. Like you need to be mature but you need to like if you alpha fork according to the rules, the GM has control. I feel uncomfortable doing that the majority of the time unless they've been separated from the fork for a long period of time. So we house ruled that, but that's a whole nother issue.
Yeah.
But like really, that's a GM problem. Like if somebody's been playing a character for God, how long have we been playing? 9 months?
Yeah, we started in March.
And I like go send them off on some bizarre sexual tryst because I get bored. Like they could easily be very offended by that. So it is a challenge for I don't think it's a game breaking challenge by any means. I think it's easy to rein in because we haven't even gotten into like the potency of Titans and Exsurgents yet. Because while there is that munching aspect, you can design something to murder them.
Yeah.
Very quickly. Like you always have that button as a GM. And it's not really railroady because they're made out in the books to be pretty scary. So
not just in their ability to kill people in combat, but also the infection, which I think is the greater threat. Is the idea no matter how badass you are, if you get infected,
one wound.
Well, if that's the vector, it could be a basilisk hack where you look at it and you go crazy or you get infected, or it could be a nanoswarm where you don't even detect it. Another thing about forks I just want to mention is that there's the stress cost. Eclipse Phase and characters can go mad. They have a sanity point system where the sanity is called lucidity, and stress checks are sanity checks basically. And if you take just being a fork causes you stress. Like you lose it. Like I'm not the real me. I'm a copy of me. And then I think if the main character sees one of his forks get killed, that should.
It's like seeing yourself get killed.
Yeah, that's kind of creepy. So you should. Those are good tools to sort of keep players from making. I'm the death machine. I'm just going to make 10 copies of myself, and then we'll just Suicide Squad. Charge in.
If they may not want to die.
Yeah, exactly. No, my character totally wants to die. Blah 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 blah.
Well, I can oblige you. Granted.
And the Exsurgent threats are really significant because of their ability to infect and
also characters. There's so many threats, so it's not all they're different threats. So one could be a combat physical threat that's going to attack and kill you. The other could be it just seeps into your mind without you knowing.
Right.
So you can have threats to cover any kind of weakness.
And one thing about the Eclipse Phase book, there is a bestiary basically in the back where they describe the different types of exsurgents you might encounter, common ones, but they don't really have like a
these are all that you
threat rating. Yeah. Like thing, so it might you need to read those in carefully because you don't want to accidentally send them. Like the most dangerous one that I can see, from my opinion, is the fractal. And so like
we've encountered one once. I think it was in that.
It was in my one shot.
In the pilot.
Yeah, in the pilot.
And no thought was made to attack them.
Yeah,
it's get the fuck away.
Well, even if you were like a erasure squad, death squad, heavily armed to the teeth, it would have been a really nasty fight. But
you guys saw one on a security camera, and Aaron went half insane, like on the spot. So there's that. The best part about you mentioned the bestiary in the back.
Yeah.
You're encouraged to make up your own variants and stuff, and that's a theme that runs through the entire book. My favorite part about the books is that while they describe the setting in painstaking detail and they give you so much stuff that you just want to run, they never railroad you and like this is the way it is.
Yeah.
Like even in so they painstakingly separate in all the books GM from player information. So you never get anything spoiled if you just want to play the game. You can just stop reading at a certain point.
Yeah.
And even in the GM section, everything's like, well, the Exurgents may have come from this, but they also could have come from this. Or maybe it's this. Or the reason they have psychic powers could be because their brains have been altered. Or maybe they see the future and those psychic powers just happened at that moment and it's a fatalistic determinant. Like, they give you all these weird potential... Like, the only thing I've seen like it is Trail of Cthulhu when they explain the different Lovecraftian deities, and it's like, maybe this, maybe a combination of these two. And I really think that's interesting because it really lets you take a cool setting and bring it in your own direction.
Yeah, actually, on that same note, also another thing I remember in the book is it says like what happened to the Titans. They don't even cover what really happened to them. It could be like they're just waiting in the wings for the next phase, or they truly left and don't care about Earth anymore.
Yeah,
it's nothing like that is ever set in stone. That's totally yours to work with.
And it's really good writing too, just in general, for like the way they set up. Just describe how they put everything in real detail. But they do this throughout the book. It's not just for the major things too. For example, like I was reading Sunward, which is their book talking about the inner system from like Mercury to the inner fringe, which is like the asteroid belt around Jupiter, I think. Anyways, they talk about like on Mars, there's one corporation called Comet Express, and they say Comex, the Jovian Republic, just shoots all their vessels on sight. No one knows why. And that's it. Like, they don't explain, like, there's this big feud between them, blah, 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 blah. So, like, you could do a whole game based on, like, why is the Jovian Republic hate them so much? And maybe Comic's a good guy because Jovian Republic's a bad guy. Maybe they're both. Maybe the Jovian Republic knows that they're actually infected by insurgents, just doesn't want to tell anybody. Maybe, who knows?
I love that. An exurgent UPS.
Yeah,
I love that idea.
What could possibly
it's
go
like the
wrong?
pilots are literally part of the ships.
Yeah.
And they deliver bad things.
Yeah. But in 30 minutes or less.
Always.
No, that's perfect. Like, my favorite criminal operation in the entire all 4 books is the Pax Familia, and literally they have a paragraph and a half. Like, that's it. It's just they just really richly describe something and give you just enough to be like, oh man, that's cool sounding.
Yeah.
Like, Gate Crashing's my favorite book they've done, and I haven't even gotten close to that yet.
Yeah.
Like, I am partway through the first 50 pages of Sunward, and we've run 30 games at this point. It's very rich material. So,
I like doing campaigns in it because it is easy to keep the character you play with the whole time.
Yeah.
Although you might have to like back up from previous save where you weren't mad.
Bad things can happen. You can't keep the same characters. So they found a more elegant solution than D&D for the metagame issue of player character death. There is the one thing for player advice. I think just in general, we talked about don't be too dependent on gear. There are a couple things I think every character should have, and one is medachines. Medachines let you regenerate. They give you bonuses to resist infections, and even robots can have them. That lets them self-repair over a certain time. So, and they're only 1,000 credits. One character.
That is a bargain.
Yeah, it's a bargain. Get it. The other thing is somebody should have TACnet software.
Yes.
Because I know if you listen to No Evil, because we abuse this.
Disagree.
The GM suddenly disagrees. Yeah, what's going on? Basically gives you a PC hive mind in game, so you can justify like, no, do this. Yelling at people over the TACnet. I make spot checks through Bob's eyes. Everything should be in HD in the future, so I should see in exacting detail. Has that problem been a problem for you, Caleb? A little bit?
Just a little bit? Just
a little bit? Tiny
bit?
I don't know.
Well, you have to make your players realize that it's not always on.
Yeah.
Like, it's not always on.
Yeah.
But, no, it's fine. I'm glad that the PC hive mind has a narrative excuse now. Don't get me wrong. Because it's not as if it would stop if there were no excuse.
Yeah.
But at the same time, at certain points, you need to isolate your players, like especially for the horror aspect. If we want to talk about themes and running it, there's different ways to deal with that. And when everybody sees through everybody's eyes, it's like, no, aim the gun here. Let me nudge it right to the left, and and it's like 6 people on the plasma rifle. It's not as scary as it could be. So TACnet is a double-edged sword for those GMs out there.
So yeah, I mean that's true. But in general,
or just the detail to just the culture of the solar system.
Yeah.
I like the description of the entertainment venues.
Yeah.
Like ego casts.
Yeah.
Where you literally get to experience what somebody else did.
Yeah.
Like with all 5 senses.
Yeah, there's a lot of fodder for that. Instead of getting the diary or whatever, you actually experience what the last guy did.
Which may or may not be a good thing.
Yeah, I'm being.
It's like wow, this okay. He did this, and oh my god, he said no, not gonna have sex with her. No, just get me out, get me out.
That's another thing. There's I think hitting on that the maturity thing is definitely an issue because if you can't handle these transhumanist themes, and a lot of people might find it controversial because of what it says about religion, like in the future religion, or sex.
I think there's like 3.
Yeah.
Actual religion.
Buddhism, techno-creationism, and worship aliens. Those are all the other ones kind of faded away.
Well, then again, once you're immortal,
yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, that's
and
true.
you can traverse the whole solar system in seconds with your mind.
Well, not seconds. I mean,
okay, fine, minutes.
Yeah, hours.
Fine. Whatever. When you can do it a lot faster than anyone else can.
Yeah, that's true.
And your body is like an accessory.
Yeah.
Yeah, really, it's. I think pretty. It's more like I'm not saying We're not saying God doesn't exist. It's pretty much okay. God, I think I can take it from here.
Well, I don't think the authors mean it from any. I'm not going to put words in their mouths, but as they're trying to sell books, I really don't think they mean it from any philosophical agenda. I think it's just a futurist likely outcome. I mean, Europe's having trouble now, and they haven't lived for 200 years and broadcast their brain, or see 95% of the world's population go extinct, or I mean, I think it's a reasonable thing to infer that the impulse would die down when you can shoot lasers out of your eyes and crazy stuff like that.
Who's the god now?
Yeah, exactly. But.
Any final words for people who are wanting to get into Eclipse Phase? Like any sort of advice?
You should do it. It's awesome. It's a great game for mature nerds who are like, ooh, Matryoshka brain, and all sorts of crazy transhumanist ideas. And I think it's really cool. So
okay,
I'd say also research it thoroughly if you're going to run it.
Yeah,
and still research it if you're going to play it, but don't feel constrained by some of the rules. You really can. Go ahead and just do your own thing.
You can't ignore stuff. And that's my final thing is I ran a one shot that took place on Earth, and I didn't I kind of improvised it, so I didn't Earth is like a fucking hellhole per canon. It's not even breathable air. But I kind of ignored a little bit of it because there were still crazy exurgent bad things and lots of craziness. But I kind of downplayed that quite a bit, and that's fine. You can't juggle every single bit of what the future tech is going to be like, future society is going to be like, like surveillance and hacking and all these other factors. Kind of minimize the stuff that you're not as interested in and just focus on the stuff that you are.
Yeah, privacy's damn near impossible.
Well, yeah, but I mean, still, you can still be stealthy and still be
do not be intimidated out of running the game.
Yeah,
give it a shot. You'll have fun.
Yeah. I mean, it took
forget getting it right until
exactly.
session 20.
Yeah, exactly. That's the main thing. Don't be intimidated by it because that I mean, we could have been playing for a year longer if I had actually manned up and played it, ran it right after I got it at Gen Con 2000.
And I really love the rolling for stuff. I love the blackjack. Get as close as you can, but not over.
Yeah. It's a simple mechanic. It's a percentile system, but in an opposed check, whoever rolls highest without going over wins. So there you go.
And also, on a personal note, I would just like to say I don't know what it is about my rolling the dice. I honestly don't.
No.
I don't. I haven't fudged die rolls in a long, long time. Ever since the episode years ago when I mentioned it.
Sure, Tom.
I'm serious.
We believe you, Tom.
I show my rolls right out in the open.
I know you do. I'm just saying.
You saying if you're thinking that I know how to alter my dice to make them roll better, that's giving me way more credit than I need.
I did kill you that one time. Oh, when's it going to happen? You don't know, listeners.
Yeah.
Well, if they would go on the forums, they could probably figure it out. Because we blab horribly about shit. So
we don't hold secrets very well.
Anyway, so I think that kind of gives us a broad overview. I think in the future episodes, we'll be talking about systems like Call of Cthulhu, One Roll Engine, Wild Talents.
I really do think we should do an actual Palladium episode.
Yeah, we might do that next just to get it out of the way.
Caleb will probably have to be here for that too.
Yeah. Caleb is already showing signs of pain.
Man up, man.
All right, so next up, Tom has a letter.
I do.
Then we have shout-outs and anecdotes.
I would like to comment now on the long-term economics of the D&D universe. No, I'm not talking about the viability of Wizards of the Coast or the place the gaming industry has in the global economy. No, I'm talking about the actual economy of the universe most people play in D&D. The fantasy world that relies on gold, silver, and copper as the primary currency. I just think that this is a poor way to run an economy. And yes, the fantasy world in D&D is a global economy. Why? Because no matter the species or race, every sentient creature will use those three metals as currency. Whether it's the human nation of Yendor, the elven kingdom of Fuckatree, or the Underdark Illithid city of We're Fucking Evil, all of them will take gold, silver, and copper for goods and services. In fact, the D&D world is a more unified world than our own. While they haven't quite achieved a world government, they do have a universal currency. Now, the biggest problem is that while stable, gold is a finite resource. So is silver and copper, but not as rare as gold. And while a planet can hold quite a bit of it, gold is hard to find. Nations have gone to war over it. And as economies grow, more gold coins will have to be minted. That means more mining and surveying of the land, and more people needing a shrinking supply. Eventually, the demand will outstrip supply, and prices will skyrocket. Nations will fall, anarchy will reign, dogs and cats living together, mass hysteria. Now, the D&D world has some unique criteria that our world does not. First of all, magic is a real game changer. Magic spells used to burrow down, and creatures like earth elementals could really get at hard-to-reach gold deposits. Or perhaps trade deals could be reached with the elemental plane of Earth. That could really boost production, and not to mention providing work for thousands of Earth-based creatures. And let's not forget dragons. They are by far the largest holder of gold in the world. They could be instrumental in providing currency controls to the world's economy. They could even establish a strong banking system. Yes, I see dragons as a vital piece of the fantasy world economy. Of course, there will always be the problem of greed. We've seen in the last few years what can happen when greed gets out of control. Fortunately, the real power players in the D&D world seem more concerned with actual power than wealth. So perhaps the focus of acquiring power, mainly mystical power, might help to curtail over-manipulation of the gold market. So the economy of the fantasy realm is as vibrant as ever, yet must be ever mindful of the finite gold supply. Steps and regulations should be instituted to help keep the currency stable and the distribution of wealth balanced. And let's look to the dragons to do their part as acting as a federal reserve, keeping things level. They might do better than our own Fed. After all, imagine if Ben Bernanke was a 100-foot-long serpent that could breathe acid.
That's a very informative letter, Tom.
Well, you're the one with the MBA. I'm sure you could use more words.
Yes, words, yes.
Words of economic things.
Ironically enough, I believe Ron Paul still wants to go back to the gold standard.
He's probably a dragon.
He's in the pocket of Big Dragon.
Yeah, he is.
The D&D world, literally.
Then again, since dragons can take on human form, one never knows.
Yes, he might. Oh, that's...
Yeah.
Ron Paul's a dragon. You heard it here first.
Like
Ron Paul 2012.
Like, vote for a dragon.
Yeah.
Because, damn.
Because, goddamn, he's a dragon.
That might be the next GOP running strategy. You want to be careful with that. They're running out of ideas.
It's like, Ron Paul, he will fucking eat you.
Yes. Well, at least none of them sparkle in the daylight. Then we'd all be fucked.
Yeah. No, then we just kill them.
Well, no. Like after
they would win.
Yeah, they would win. Exactly.
It would be a landslide.
Yeah. Like, he sparkles. Anyways, he just needs someone who loves him.
Okay, Ross.
I can change him.
Okay, Ross, that stops now. That stops right now.
All right, so let's do some shout-outs, huh? Yeah.
Yeah, why don't we do that, Ross?
First off, I want to talk about a web series that I've been finding hilarious. It's called Next Time on Lonnie. It's a take on reality TV, but the format is very unusual. First, they'll show like the last 20 seconds, 30 seconds of an episode of Lonnie. Oh, he's having a date with his girlfriend. They're staying in. Oh, it's so romantic. And then next time on Lonnie, oh my God, she's dead. What do we do? We need to bury the body. And then it goes on and on and on.
Like aliens show up.
Yeah, well, in another episode. So there's been 6 episodes so far. Each one is hilarious. Each one has a different premise. And they're all hilarious. So what else do you need? It's free entertainment, you goobers, you fans.
You buy it, you leptons.
Well, there's nothing to buy. It's a free website.
Everything's for sale, Ross.
No, only Zombies for the World is for sale, and you will buy it.
Snap!
You will buy my book.
There's a ninja plug.
I know,
You
right?
didn't see it coming.
I know, yeah. If you use coupon word MetaZombie on there, get 15% off till the end of the month. So, Caleb, you had one.
I got, speaking of Twilight and young adult novels, I got Ross for Christmas, and because I want to play it, I am that gift giver. The Hunger Games board game, it's called Training Days. Everybody plays a tribute. If you don't know, The Hunger Games is a YA novel, and the premise is that there was a revolt against the main capital city long ago, and in order to keep the proles in their place, every year they pick 2 children and make them compete in this reality show fight to the death. And it's not like figurative, like
literally.
It's battle royale. They drop you in there, and you have weapons.
Yeah, an explosive collar.
Yeah, and you murder each other.
Yeah.
So you there's that, and it's the board game version of it.
Yeah.
You play characters before they go in the arena, and the weapons you get and the help you get in the arena is dependent on your ratings. Yeah. So basically, everyone's competing for ratings. And so it seems pretty cool. We haven't played it yet, but I'm psyched to try it.
Yeah, we'll definitely, and with our video game, we'll probably give a video review of it. So stay tuned for that. So, Tom, you had one.
Yeah, I have one. It is a YouTube video that I have just actually discovered today, literally. So I haven't been able to put up on the best internet videos.
The forums.
It's the forums. So I'm going to mention it now. It's called Just Glue Some Gears on It and Call It Steampunk. Which essentially, it's a really well done music video about the problems with steampunk.
Yeah, I don't want to be the bearer of bad news, but I'm not sure, but I'm pretty certain.
I've heard, that
steampunk is dead, and the reason I know this is because Justin Bieber just put out a music video. Santa Claus is coming to town, where he's a steampunk Santa Claus with steampunk Santa elves dancing acrobatically in break dancing.
Yeah, it's dead. That's a kill. Yeah. That is a kill.
So I'm sorry to be the one to have to tell you this, but Justin Bieber's now.
So all those steampunk merchandise booths at Gen Con need to just stop.
Yeah,
or find something else. I have like goth, just actual goth stuff.
Yeah, too early. Yeah, give it another 50 years. Until then, I declare diesel punk, pretend to be a 1950s greaser with atomic power.
Spanner wrenches.
It's like Fallout, but cooler. So yeah, there you go. There's your next thing, atom punk. Next up, I'd like to, or Caleb, you had some more, so yeah.
I'm up. I just read a book called Zone 1 by Colton Whitehead. Fellow nerds out there may have heard it plugged on NPR. It's NPR's first supported zombie novel.
Yeah.
It is very good, and it is very literate, like they said. It deals with the post-apocalypse. So
civilization's rebuilding.
Yeah, the civilization is rebuilding, and there's a government in Buffalo, New York. And as a publicity stunt, instead of their refugee camps that are heavily defended, they're going to try and clear Manhattan Island. And so it's from the perspective of one of the sweepers that goes through and clears out any zombies that didn't come and try and attack the Marines when they went rolling through the streets playing death metal. So they're basically like janitors with endless numbers of corpses, but they're all made up survivors of the zombie apocalypse. And it's only one day in the sweeper's life, but it moves very slowly in terms of story time, and it jumps back and forth between the main character, who's called Mark Spitz for a funny reason that you find out. The main character's life in the one day of clearing and sweeping, and then how he survived. And it's very literate in that they talk a lot about something they call PASD, post-apocalyptic stress disorder.
Yeah.
And everyone is totally messed up, like mentally, like no one made it through, which is a really interesting concept to heighten.
Good research fodder if you... Eclipse Phase, probably everyone has that same thing.
Yeah.
Unless they psychosurgery it out. Yeah.
Yes, it's very literate, but at the same time, they don't like skimp on gore or headshots or any cool stuff like that. So
nice.
Delightful.
let's see. I would also like to mention again the Minecraft server for RPPR. Show up and build crazy things. And I would also like to mention Bubbles and Troubles. This is a RPPR listener. Posted this on the Facebook group. It's a scenario for Cthulhu Dark set at I just found out about it. It's set like an underwater habitat, like a sea lab kind of thing, or a floating sea lab kind of thing, and crazy bad things happen. Cthulhu Dark, you've obviously listened to it, or you might have listened to it on the actual play, where you can find out it's a very rules light system, and it can be very serious, or very not serious.
Depending on the maturity level of people involved.
But the PDF's only 99 cents, and Cthulhu Dark's a free game. So if you need something to run without like having to do a lot of work, then this would be a good way to do that.
Well, yes, we are an industrious nation, but when we can get out of work, we do.
Yeah. Tom, you mentioned another story that you wanted to...
Yeah, my actually, I know I've mentioned this fanfic already.
Yeah.
But I mean, many shows ago. But it's now It's now in the 129th chapter.
Okay.
And it just gets better the more I read it.
Mass Effect fanfiction.
Mass Effect fanfiction. The author's name is Miatel.
Yeah.
It's called Spirit of Redemption. Well, that's what it's going to be when you look for it. But she's actually gone to like spirit of many different things as the story's gone on.
Spirit of cheese.
No, not quite that, Ross. Let's be serious. Please, be serious, Ross. No.
Spirit of banality?
No.
Spirit of...
No, Ross. I'm just going to keep saying no. But no, she did. She had a...
vengeance. There's got to be a spirit of vengeance.
Actually, I believe there is.
Yeah, see, that's kind of the gaming word. That's kind of like vengeance. Yeah, that's badass.
But, no, she's covered many Christmases throughout her chapter. The story's gone through years of actual time.
Yeah.
But the latest one is...
They have Space Christmas.
Oh, yeah, well, the humans do.
Okay.
And it's also... currently in her story, there's a huge war going on between the Batarians and everyone else.
Okay.
And all the children of the main characters have been moved to this secret location, so they're not used as... they're not threatened. And since all the kids, I mean, most of them are aliens and don't really get Christmas, but they love getting presents. So they decide to go through with this to make the kids feel better. And one of the characters, they dress a Solarian as Santa Claus, which if you played Mass Effect are the kind of amphibian-looking aliens.
Okay.
And I love that so much. That was so beautiful. A Solarian dressed as Santa.
The reason for the season.
Exactly. An alien Santa Claus, especially one like that.
Okay.
I think that deserves special mention. That is in chapter 128. That scene, by the way.
Okay.
So I know if you like
just read that one, ignore the rest of it.
Well, if you like fan fiction, seriously, this is one of the best I've ever read.
Okay.
And I've read a lot.
You had another book you were talking about, the nonfiction one.
Yeah, I just got it. I haven't gotten all the way through it yet, but there's a book by Dave McRaney called "You Are Not So Smart." It's based off a blog he ran for a while, so his blog's still up, and they have a pretty slick book trailer on Amazon if you want to see it. But it's basically pop psychology, and it aggregates a lot of really accurate psychological studies that have been done and organizes them in very easy to read, enjoyable chunks. But it's all about cognitive biases and like ways your brain betrays you and why from an evolutionary standpoint. So it talks about priming, like how advertisement will work on you if you are not aware it's working on you. So he brings up studies where like if you do something that would be you talk about one thing that you did in your past that made you feel guilty, and then you are given the option to wash your hands, and then as you leave they ask you to donate to a separate project, and people who wash their hands are like 80% less likely to donate than people who didn't have the ability to wash their hands, because subconsciously they've cleansed themselves by washing their hands physically, as opposed to the people who just talked about something they felt guilty about and then got asked for a donation. So, like, it's really interesting stuff to me, like why you procrastinate, why you have more Facebook friends than you really need, like all that kind of stuff. So, as a nerd who is not smart enough to handle the actual science of it, it's very nice to see it put in a nice digestible format like that.
There's a book I read that's it talks a little bit more about the consumer. I think it's called Predictably Irrational. It talks about, again, the same sort of cognitive biases and how they apply to business and marketing, it's an interesting field. One thing that, I don't know if your book would cover this or not, everyone lives in the past. There's actually an 80 millisecond delay between when something actually happens and your brain processes it.
I've read that. I don't know if the book covers that. It covers how procrastination is the fault of something called present bias.
Yeah.
The faulty assumption that your values at that exact moment are going to be your values in the future, and the fact that you cannot envision having different values. It's like your brain just doesn't do it well. So even though you really want to play Skyrim for 10 hours right that moment, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're not going to want to not get fired in a week for not having the project done. So they explain like stuff like that. It's kind of like life hacker stuff.
Yeah.
So it's pretty interesting for me at least. So
Yeah, no, it sounds like a good read.
I've never had a problem playing Skyrim for 10 hours straight.
Well,
that will be my future value.
Fuck you, work.
Yeah. I want to mention the Drunk and the Ugly podcast. They're an actual play podcast. I ran a game of Road Trip, Monsters and Other Childish Things for them a couple of days ago over Skype, and they'll be posting on their podcast pretty soon. And they are doing a road trip that's gone over like 40 sessions. So road trip campaign over 40 sessions, and wacky hijinks and adventures and monsters destroying things. So good times. And so I can't see. They're fun players too. We did the Sunny Val chapter, which is the one based on the Power Rangers and Requiem for a Dream and Elric, where the Power Rangers had magic weapons that drained the souls of the monsters they killed, and they were addicted to the power that it gave them. So and all the monsters appeared whenever they had emotional problems. So they were teenagers. The monsters were constantly destroying things all the time. So they got them. They eventually decided, well, these guys are jerks. Even though we helped them and they destroy monsters, why don't we just trick them, get them to fight each other? And so they did, with horrible consequences. Good job, team. Good job.
Player characters, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, pretty much. Let's see. I'm going to put a link up to the Excel character sheet for the Eclipse Phase thing, because, that's pretty
Definitely
awesome.
Good.
And the Eclipse Phase characters, I know one of the resources you really liked was the NPC files for Eclipse Phase.
Essential.
Yeah.
Essential if you're going to be a GM for any length of time.
Yeah.
We talked about the complexity of character generation. Doing that for every NPC is not fun.
Yeah.
So the NPC file gives you like 30 NPCs. And I buy the PDF adventures for that. Like I occasionally try and work them into the campaign sometimes if I have a off week and I can make it seem organic. I'll throw in one of their pre-generated one-shots, which are really good. But more than anything else, I steal the stats from the NPCs. If you're going to run any lengthy EP campaign, I'd say that's a must.
Yeah.
Or at least because you're going to run
a
out.
one-shot,
you're going to run out of the pre-gens in the books, which are great, but you'll eventually run out of them.
Yeah.
Or you won't find something.
Well, they cover
for
kind of
something
more
you need.
antagonistic things, not like generic security guard.
Yeah.
Or shifty, hypercorp executive or something like that. They don't really cover.
And you can mix and match the stats and all that kind of thing.
Because the one weakness of the Eclipse Phase is, all characters are very complex. Unlike the one roll engine system where you can abstract characters down to like one dice pool or something like that. Where he's a 5D goon, or they're 5D group of goons or whatever. There's no minion or simple NPC rules, but that's a minor thing.
They account for player unpredictability too.
Yeah,
I want to kill these case morph construction workers because they're taking too long in their lunch break. I can look that up and stat them out for the ensuing battle.
They took our jobs.
Yeah.
And then the Humble Bundle 4, another one of those Humble Bundles where you get
clanking masses.
7 computer games for
would they have
$5. They're case morphs.
I don't even know why they have lunch. Well, I guess that's a reason to kill them.
Yeah,
They're just standing
on a
there.
lunch break. That's shifty. That's killed.
Bullshit. Check.
Yeah. And then finally, I do want to mention I've just recorded an episode of Unspeakable with Adam Scott Glancy and Shane Ivey and Dan Harms, who wrote the Encyclopedia Cthulhica and the Necronomicon files. Or Dan did. And we talk about running horror games advice. And so, of course, Scott Glancy regales us with many stories of horrible things that happen in Call of Cthulhu. And I'll just leave you this one line that was seared into my memory. The ticks were size of poker chips. So on their character sheets.
Oh my god.
So I believe that covers all the...
Our assholes have clenched up now.
Yeah, sphincter clench a little bit. I think that covers all the shout-outs. So, anecdotes. I think we'll talk about the last episode, or the season, the tier finale for...
No
Eclipse
Evil.
Phase, for No Evil, for the Moon tier. You know, we've had 2 tiers. We're just using the D&D terminology now. We had Venus tier, then we have Moon. And next one will be Earth orbit, I believe, right? So,
Yes. Yeah.
And in Venus tier, or in Moon tier, we had to rob a bank. And one is like, we have fabricators in Eclipse Phase. Why is there a bank? So, why is there a bank, Caleb?
I'd say mainly the safety deposit boxes.
Yeah. Banks are they're trading. The main thing in the system is lunar banks trade. They convert rep scores from autonomous habitats into credit scores.
Space anarchists.
Yeah, into credit scores where the habitats have not made fabbers generally available to people, and so there's still like a finite amount of resources just because they want to control the people there. They convert that back and forth mainly, but I figured if they had actual offices, it would be for like one-of-a-kind items where you could not fab it or get it anywhere else, hyper rare Earth artifacts and things like that. So they needed something in there, and so I didn't really plan the game so much as I statted out the defenses of the building that all the stuff was in, and then we played a game where the PCs came up with the next game. Like they decided the plan and what order it occurred in. And it will be the worst game ever to listen to, as I realized about midway through it. But the game after that is gangbusters. It's nice. So
Well, you did provide us a sort of a template for the bank robbery, because like I'm somewhat schooled in Eclipse Phase and its intricacies, but like planning the space bank robbery like from scratch would be really like I remember one of the things, like the plants they use just to pretty up the place have Kim sniffers. So the plants can say you have a gun and tell the computer that they have guns. So like,
yeah.
Or the fucking statue out front.
Yeah, it's not really a statue, things like that. So yeah, I did give a template. I hope it was enough.
Obviously,
I know my anecdote I want to focus on.
Okay.
So there's this. So I give the template. I have them be a bunch of crazy async bank robbers, and one of them is a neo-avian who failed Uplift, who also has psychic powers. Eclipse Phase. And it's pre-language. And so they have this plan that they want to convince the original bank robbers to help them with the bank robbery and increase their chances if they can convince them. So they're talking to separate bank robbers, seeing if they can convince them to help them out. And there's this neo-raven that is just have this hard-on for killing humans, just psychotically hates them for all the thing it's done to him in his life. And so it's like making pictures of kids next to guns because it's pre-language. And the PCs unanimously like, no, we can't do anything like that. Then the PC plan comes around. Ross's character reinstantiates 12 people he's purposely turned into psychopaths, gives them guns and armors, and tells them to attack a civilian center while they bring another angry mob element into this industrial park full of civilians.
Well, by mob you mean actual mafia, not
So more people with guns, and they cause a terrorist gunfight between these two factions and the robotic defenses of the bank with like school children.
We didn't know the school children were going to be
and
there.
Like bank executives, janitors, like walking around in this horrific gunfight of utter death. But we can't appease that Neo Raven's threat for violence.
We didn't know the kids were going to be there.
Jason snapped someone's neck unnecessarily. He knocked him out. He snapped his neck after he was unconscious.
Well, this was Jason.
Like it's just like they murdered at least 50 people, and like the Raven's like, no, we can't let that guy help. That's just sick. We'll kill we'll space the habitat and then rob it once everybody's dead.
We didn't go through with the spacing. That was just impractical.
I bet that security box is shielded. Let's set off a neutrino bomb and sift for it through the wreckage. But this Raven's crazy. We can't do that.
Well, it's like we don't want to kill people.
Yeah.
It just seems to happen around us.
you killed everyone.
We didn't kill everyone.
No, we didn't.
You murdered lots of people.
We murdered lots of people, yes.
But
I
we
didn't
do
kill
that-
the guards that I disabled at the vault. I just, made them go to sleep.
And I never killed anyone I didn't have to.
Yeah. And Thad made it out alive with the gunfight zone, so that's one person we didn't kill.
Yeah.
One of the other player characters.
I'm not saying that you can't do it that way. The plan was for it to be an open. I just questioned the internal logic of, no, we can't do that. That would be wrong. And then planning a terrorist attack.
I was consistent. I was the one who didn't care if there were people.
It's true. It's true. Your character didn't care.
Yeah.
Well, and also I said,
Take him back.
I didn't want him because he wanted to kill people.
Yeah.
We just tend to do it when there's no other choice. Now, okay, granted, maybe our criteria for what no other choice means is subjective, but
Less of an example of EP typical play and more an example of ubiquitous player logic that exists across all games everywhere.
Yeah.
well, the fact that PCs see themselves as the only real people.
Yeah.
Yeah. And sometimes literally, everyone else is a simulation. So yeah, I mean, to be fair, this is like Jason, I'm not taking my body armor off, and
No, I didn't. I wasn't angry about it. I just thought it was kind of funny afterwards because I didn't realize it until the next game.
Yeah.
As I'm racking up the NPC body count, I'm like, wait a second. Didn't they discourage getting help from these people because they were too vicious?
If I'd known there were going to be school children there, I wouldn't. We would have used a narc hey, 2 birds with 1 stone. Two birds.
Or we might have hired the kids to help us out somehow.
There we go. Give them guns and murder.
It's like here, just take this and go nuts. Just shoot everywhere.
Give them schizo, murder, and guns. Tiny little guns for their tiny little hands. Because remember, firearms are recoilless in Eclipse Phase.
And besides, these are
guns.
kids. They might not have the the apocalyptic schizo yet. So we need to get them on ball. They need to be ready for the real.
Give them the schizo and tell them it's a video game that they're playing. So a really advanced augmented reality game. So
it's like Grand Theft Starship.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that's a kind of enough to give people some flavor of what Eclipse Phase is really like. And we said all those people aren't really dead; they'll be backed up or they'll be restored.
They all are.
The children don't have cortical sacs.
They do.
Well, even if they don't have cortical sacs, they can still be backed up from ego bridges. And things. So yeah.
I felt sorry for the
my
nanny.
character died plenty of times when he was a kid.
And
he turned out just fine.
Hey, I felt sorry.
Lost generation represent.
Hey, I felt sorry for that robotic nanny that was with them.
Yeah.
Because you tell says, okay, let's be delighted. It's like shut up, robot lady, and do your job. Yes, sir.
See, the kids were horrible people.
These were yuppie larvae.
Yeah.
Yet again, more examples of player logic as they rationalize the murder of children.
It's not like that's very
we
hard.
don't even know they were really children.
Where's
They could have
your
been.
not so smart book about cognitive bias?
They could have
be a chapter on
been.
this.
They could have been adults in there. We don't know. I remember the first game I ever played in. I had to murder a lot of children.
They could have been copies of. They could have been copies of Claudia for all we know.
Exactly. See.
Yeah.
Anyways, so that's Eclipse Phase. So
It's perfectly normal.
Ross Payton here with Tom Church
Yep.
and Caleb, and this has been RPPR.
Bye, everybody.
Roleplay Bubble Radio, episode 68. Phases that are eclipsed and Audible Books.
Dos Vidania.
.com/podcasting. We'll see you guys next time. You want to listen to it? Audible has it. With over 85,000 titles and virtually every genre, you'll find what you're looking for. Get a free audiobook and a 14-day trial today by signing up at audiblepodcast.com/roleplaying. That's audiblepodcast.com/roleplaying. Audible Podcast, AUDIBLE podcast, PODCAST.com/roleplaying, ROLEPLAYING.